Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a fascinating show today, really a fascinating case study. Something I never knew existed. And we're going to be talking about an atrophied muscle because of the nerve innervation to the muscle, kind of being crushed, if you will, by the growth of the muscle, and how Adam Girmann, Dr. Jeremy Girmann's brother, who's been on the show, actually reversed it in a bodybuilder. And, you know, this is a big deal because if you're a bodybuilder, you've been working perhaps a decade on growing muscle and having a certain form factor and a shape to a muscle. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in this case, a quadricep, a huge contributor to the musculature of a bodybuilder, just starts not growing right. And there was no injury. So it wasn't like we can say, oh, yeah, you know, he was in a car accident once and that's what happened. And what do you do? If you're a bodybuilder and you have one huge quad and one small quad, you're not going to go very far. And Adam Girmann actually helped him and fixed the problem. We're going to talk about this. It's very fascinating. Before we get started, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. If you haven't tried a Tasty Pastry, you're really missing out. It's basically a Pop-Tart reimagined, and less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high quality, high leucine protein, 4 to 5 net carbs. But more importantly, you'll eat them because they taste delicious, and they can't keep them in stock, which is a testament to the fact that they taste delicious. And guess what? People buy them for their kids. If a kid will eat a healthy snack, it's because it tastes delicious, because you can give your kids all the protein bars that you want, and you send them to school with them, and there'll be one bite out of it, and they'll bring it home and say, oh, no, it tasted terrible. You'll have to wrestle these out of your kids' hands. That's how good they taste. Go to shrnetwork.biz /legendary, and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off everything at the website. Funny story I want to tell you before we get started. I've been riding motorcycles for a very, very long time. This weekend, actually Friday, I went to put gas in my bike and pushed my kickstand down. Thought it locked, but it didn't. Came back up, and I went to lean the bike to the left, and I went down. And my bike weighs 780 pounds. So it was kind of like being thrown to the ground by an MMA wrestler, an MMA fighter. I got a big bruise on my left cheek and my butt. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because I'm convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that if I didn't have the muscle, if I was frail, if I was a 64-year-old man, the typical 64-year-old man, I would be probably in the hospital right now with something broken. But nothing broke. And I was so embarrassed that I jumped out from under the bike. Thank God I have a crash bar, so my leg wasn't pinned under the bike. I jumped out from under the bike, and I lifted it, and then I looked around to see if anybody saw me because I was so embarrassed. And the guy gassing up in front of me, he came running over. He says, you okay? You okay? I said, yeah. He goes, you sure you're okay? I said, yeah, no, I'm fine. I put the kickstand down and filled the bike up and left. But trust me, I will never try to lean that bike over unless I know the kickstand is down ever again. But the key here is Muscle saves lives. We've done shows called Muscle Saves Lives. And the only thing that has been proven in science to extend the life of humans is the noble pursuit of muscle and strength. 60 years old for a woman, 65 years old for a man. The more strength the more muscle you carry into those ages, the more likely you are to live longer and not develop traditional diseases of aging. But yeah, I'm convinced I would have broke a hip or something. No doubt about it. All right, so that's it. Let's get my guest on here. Welcome to the show, Adam Girmann. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. Doing well. How are you?
Pleasure. And Adam's brother, Jeremy, is a brilliant clinician and physician who does some amazing things with people. He is the doctor you want to go to, but he's probably not in your city. He's in Columbus, right? He's in Columbus, Ohio, right?
In Fairfield, so closer to Cincinnati.
Yeah, okay. But the guy, and I actually, I have to go visit him because I have some work I need him to do for me. Anyway, let's talk about this study. This study was called Reversing Atrophy, right? No. What was the paper actually called? Because there's a couple papers. There's one about ultrasound and then one about prolotherapy and PRP. So the paper was called what?
So is the value of ultrasound in essentially diagnosing a very small mononeuropathy of the femoral nerve to the vastus lateralis in a bodybuilder.
Now, this is really interesting to me too, because this innervation issue occurred naturally just from the muscle growing, right?
Correct.
So a lot of us have, well, I have a lot of disfigurements from surgeries. I've had triceps reattached and stuff like that. So obviously my left tricep doesn't look like it used to. But a lot of us will say, you know, my right quad just doesn't have the same sweep as my left quad. And we just chalk it up to, you know, that's the way I was formed in the womb. But what you learned is that might not be the case, huh?
Right, absolutely. We're really kind of coming to find that, kind of hypothesizing that it's much more common pathology than kind of was once before thought, because in this particular case, it was so striking to be such a large portion of the muscle. But seeing that it's been seen in one other instance, and it's quite a common occurrence, such as with carpal tunnel, something that we're a lot more familiar with, and other such pathologies in the upper forearm and such, that, yeah, we're kind of coming to believe that it's a lot more common, and a lot of people are probably dealing with it and just not knowing, and just chalking up to, as you say, you know, one muscle is a little bit shorter, has a different curvature on this side, you know, and it might be a pathology underlying.
So what happened here is just the natural progression of growth of the tissue from stimuli, like for a bodybuilder, you know, you're trying to make your muscles bigger and bigger. It kind of started to crush the nerve. Now, how much of this is a result of fascia? So I do high rep work at the end of my workout because I want, and I also use BFR bands from time to time, which I love. Because my theory is, you know, if you want to put more furniture in the house, you need to have a bigger house. And if you want more muscle tissue, then the fascia becomes the walls of the house, so to speak. So the fascia has to grow in order to let the muscle grow. So could it possibly be that the fascia was resistant to growing along with the muscle and caused this extreme pressure on the nerve?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of one of our primary hypotheses was it was due to kind of the myofascial plane between the rectus femoris and the vastus lateralis, and kind of thinking that if they were growing at different rates, or if they were just growing particularly fast, there might have been, because the nerve will actually dive through that fascial plane to get to the muscle. And so you can imagine if these two shearing forces are kind of impinging on the nerve, that kind of underlie or was underneath the entire reasoning that we had for doing the treatment that we ended up doing on this particular individual.
And so is this a possible reason that bodybuilders should look into things like Rolfing and even deep tissue body work? Now they call it body work. I have a lady who does body work for me. She's actually in my building. It's not enjoyable. It's very painful. But they really are working on like separating tissue gently, you know, but it's still, do you think there's that some bodybuilders who may have, one bicep that's bigger than the other or something like that could look to something as simple as body work to maybe correct that?
I don't think it's out of the question. And I think that it could certainly be beneficial kind of as a preventionary step.
Yes.
The one thing that I would kind of bring up is that actually when he had initially presented to a physician, it was to an orthopedic clinic, and they diagnosed him with a simple muscle strain. They had no idea of kind of the underlying pathology, and which we kind of got a kick out of. But he was actually referred for PT and myofascial release massage, and he actually had that done for several months with no relief. So
It's nothing.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of on the side of, it might be a little too late. And so I would think that, as with anything, I think kind of working on that pliability and kind of the fluidity and making sure that everything along with the fascia is kind of all greased and in motion, I think is certainly not a bad idea for just keeping yourself out of injury for sure.
So there were really two breakthroughs in this paper that you published. The first one was the ability to diagnose this problem. So you did something that hasn't been done before, and you actually were able to diagnose it using ultrasound. Talk about that. Expand on that.
Mm-hmm. So when the patient actually initially presented, like I had said, he had no imaging done. It was just kind of on the clinical image. He was diagnosed with a muscle strain. So we said, okay, kind of the next kind of function that we need to kind of look into is MRI. So we ordered an MRI because, great at looking soft tissue, looking at nerves. But unfortunately, it really didn't show anything except for obviously this kind of giant area of atrophy. And so
what does giant area of atrophy look like on an MRI? Is it a dark spot? Is it a light spot? Or is it just the muscle is smaller?
It's smaller and then also kind of hyper dense. Is kind of what we look for. And so from that point forward, we were kind of saying, okay, this is probably a structural defect that's a little bit too small to see even on MRI, which kind of gave us the idea to, and kind of looking at the literature where we had seen this one such case that was a pretty good mirror of what we were seeing, except for they hadn't had the modality of ultrasound to look at it. And with their hypothesis that it was a very distal branch of the femoral nerve, and we thought, well, hey, why don't we take a look at this and kind of see if this is kind of their hypothesis rings true with the ultrasound.
Okay. And when you use the ultrasound, you were actually able to determine the nerve that was being squished, kind of, right?
So we were able to trace the femoral nerve to where it gives off approximately 3 to 5 branches to the distal vastus lateralis. And it's really difficult because when you're getting to that small of branches, there's not really any modality that's going to pick it up perfectly. So a lot of times you kind of have to follow the vasculature because nerves always run with vasculature. So we were looking at kind of the terminal branches of the femoral artery and knowing that the nerves would be traveling with those. And we saw them really doing kind of a tortuous winding course under the rectus femoris, kind of in that myofascial plane, and then saw them emerging into the vastus lateralis. And so we were kind of like, okay, this is where we're seeing the pathology directly distal to this in the muscle. So, going along with this hypothesis from a prior paper, we're thinking that this is what's happening and this is where that impingement might be.
Okay. All right. So then the approach was, how do we release this squishing of the nerve? How do we alter it? How do we change it? And at the same time, not hurt the nerve? Because you just can't grab a nerve and move it or poke it a couple times, because then you're creating an injury. So this is where you used what did you call it? It's water
hydrodissection.
Yeah, thank you. Say it again for my audience because I spoke over you. Say it again.
Hydrodissection.
Hydrodissection. It's dissecting with water. Really, that's what it is. So how did you do that? Did you just take a big syringe and get close to it and push saline into the area?
So what was absolutely huge was having that modality of ultrasound to be able to pinpoint, because we're talking about, structures that we can't even really see on ultrasound. So just to be going in there with a blind needle, there was essentially no chance for any effect actually coming from it. So being able to kind of target under ultrasound those where we believe to be the terminal branches of that nerve we were able to inject a 5% dextrose or sugar solution that's often used in hydrodissection, and it's referred to as prolotherapy because it essentially causes some irritation in that area that's then able to accrue inflammatory factors. So it was kind of a twofold treatment where we wanted to separate this fascia to give this nerve some space to then be able to actually have a natural course, in addition to recruiting some inflammatory factors with the prolotherapy and subsequent PRP to then actually regenerate that nerve and lead to reinnervation of the muscle.
Now, prolotherapy is a fascinating therapy that everybody thinks they can do themselves. I actually did administer a form of prolotherapy on myself that I'll talk about in a second. But prolotherapy is kind of like when you have chronic injuries that don't seem to heal completely, you go in and you kind of gently and strategically re-injure the area to get the body to pay attention. Hey, you never finished this job over here, right? That's like the layman's terms of what it is, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And then kind of piggybacking off of that to then inject PRP as well was kind of taking advantage of that new inflammation, because PRP does work the best in kind of settings of acute injury, to then say, okay, we're just going to bring all of these platelet-derived growth factors and really put it all in one spot to kind of, as you said, tell the body, this is an injury, we need to take care of this, and we need to have regrowth on this chronic issue.
So I had, when I first started working out over 20 years ago, I was doing toe presses on a traditional plate-loaded leg press machine. And I was going for that stretch. I want to really stretch my calves. And what I ended up doing was pulling the soft tissue away from the bottom of the heel of my foot, where it attaches to the base of the foot, right on the inside of the heel.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave myself a nasty case of plantar fasciitis. Traditional symptoms, I'd wake up in the morning, everything, my feet are stiff and painful. But once I started walking, everything was fine. And it sucked. I had it for about 3 months. It was miserable. I had a hard time. Obviously, I couldn't train calves anymore because I didn't want to keep injuring myself. I happened to be in Florida during spring break with the kids. I was so aggravated of waking up every morning with this pain that I went down to the seashore, right where the sand is still wet. So it's dense, it's packed. And I just started driving my heels into the sand. And I walked for about 30 minutes. And with every step, I would drive my heels into that sand. The next morning, I woke up, the pain wasn't there, and it never, ever came back. And really what I did was, I did a kind of prolotherapy. The sand conformed to the shape of my heel, and it kept hitting that area where the soft tissue was damaged. Soft tissue is avascular. It gets all of its nutrients from the space around it. And basically what I did was I kind of did a kind of prolotherapy to my heel. My plantar fasciitis went away, and it's never, ever returned. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah, essentially kind of the same underlying mechanism of just, controlled irritation to then kind of,
yes,
this old injury that the body wasn't worrying about. We have a new injury that really needs some focus. So
you're right. So do you think you would have gotten the same results with just prolotherapy, or do you think that the PRP really allowed the bricks and mortar for the repair to occur?
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially since there haven't been any similar cases that, at least in the literature. I think that especially for the patient that we were dealing with, a very athletic individual that was looking to get back into bodybuilding kind of as quickly as possible, I think that it certainly jump-started it, or at least gave him kind of the building blocks to really take off in that acute phase of injury, to kind of be able to be where he is today, mere months later, kind of getting ready for his first bodybuilding competition after this injury.
Now, what did you use for the prolotherapy? I know there's lots of implements, if you want to call it, like some of them just look like the back of a butter knife. What did you use specifically on that dense muscle? Because you're having to really reach an area inside the muscle with the force that you're using with your whatever implement you're using. Talk about that.
Yeah, so just using the same needle that we would be going in there to do the hydrodissection, it was essentially just with that prolotherapy, which was a 5% dextrose solution, which is used quite commonly kind of in carpal tunnel syndromes and supinator syndromes.
You know what I just realized? I am confusing two therapies. Prolotherapy is when you inject something that aggravates the area. I'm sorry. I'm talking about, I can't recall what they call it when they have those blunt objects. Right. The original show I did on prolotherapy showed that if you use lecithin and in a solution, that you could actually reduce body fat using prolotherapy by injecting into the fat cells and aggravating them, so to speak, and then they give off their fat. I apologize. I actually had two therapies confused. So sure, you went into the muscle, into the area, and you released this solution, and then that created an alert to the body. Hey, you got to come and fix this. We have an irritation here, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so it's kind of twofold. We were going especially kind of targeting right at those locations where we believe that the nerve was going through the fascia to enter into the muscle.
Oh, there we go. We lost you for a second.
Oh, back.
Yeah, you're back now. It says where you went into the muscle and then you dropped out.
Yeah, so essentially just going into that fascial plane where we believe that those terminal nerve branches were, to kind of open up that area, and then along with kind of what you've been speaking about, just kind of depositing that acute inflammatory mediators to kind of get the jump start on healing. But kind of first and foremost, to open up that area with that volume of fluid to allow for some resolution of that impingement.
And do you think that just the hydrodissection process itself contributed to like the space that it created in and of itself probably had a big role to play in the starting of healing, because now the nerve is like, oh, I'm not being squished anymore?
Yeah, certainly, because they kind of have a classification for nerve injuries, and we've kind of classify this as kind of a stage 2 injury, or it's called axonotmesis. So essentially, you have kind of the myelin, which is kind of a little jacket surrounding the nerve, and then some of the fibrous tissue of the nerve as well that's been damaged. So to kind of need to relieve that impingement, which is kind of one of the modalities that's used in carpal tunnel syndrome, where you can even see kind of similar atrophy occurring in the hand because of that compression on the nerve. And so you do a similar treatment where you go in with hydrodissection to open up that carpal tunnel and allow for that nerve regeneration. So that was kind of the main modality that we focused on, and kind of the one that, yeah, like you were saying, I believe kind of brought the most effect from that.
Would there have been any benefits to adding any types of peptides, like mechanogrowth factor, for instance?
You know, that's certainly a good question. And I don't think that it would have hurt in any way, especially the ones that are kind of focused at, connective tissue regeneration. Right. I think that that'd be certainly a good idea kind of going forward. It's kind of difficult to use in clinical practice when there's, not quite as much research done as compared to like PRP and prolotherapy, but it's certainly a good thought, and one that I'd love to kind of keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, because IGF-1/EC, which is mechanogrowth factor, has specific to muscle and soft tissue regenerating abilities, and it would be great, like if you put a couple milligrams of, especially if you could put it in a medium that keeps it localized. The PRP is in a medium, right? Isn't it? Is it in a medium or it's not?
So essentially all that's used with PRP is just straight the patient's blood, which is then spun down. Right. And so you're drawing off that rich. So it's really just, in addition to just a small amount of buffer solution that's actually able to separate out that blood, it's just entirely those platelets from the own person's body. So, but it is a pretty thick kind of consistency, and so it does stay in one place pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was curious. Does it stay in one place? Okay. So if that stays in one place, and you could put the IGF-1/EC into that and just keep it localized right there, that would be phenomenal. That would be interesting.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We have some questions from the audience, too, we'll get to on the way back. And then we'll talk more about this bodybuilder and his career, I'm guessing, is back on track, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We'll get to all your questions. I promise. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. We'll be right back. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. There have been no new innovations in men's underwear for hundreds of years. That's all about to change with Sheath. Sheath creates 2 separate compartments for your man stuff so it doesn't get smashed into a mound and sweaty and stinky. I won't wear any other underwear now that I've learned about Sheath, and you won't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/sheath underwear. That's SHEATHUNDERWEAR. Use code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off. I promise you, once you try a pair of Sheath underwear, you will never wear anything else. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today.
New Mass Pro Synthagen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthagen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthagen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthagen.com. Mass Pro Synthagen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Hey, welcome back. We're talking with Adam Girmann, and we're talking about this case study where they were able to reverse the atrophy in a bodybuilder's quad through a couple unique approaches. And one of the unique approaches was the diagnosis approach using ultrasound. So, excuse me, I'm wheezing. We have some comments and questions here. So Joseph Lanigan says, I'm dealing with this issue right now. My left thigh has shrunk at least by 50% due to nerve damage. I had a micro discectomy in April, but my leg has been shrinking slowly for 2 years. Now, a A discectomy is in the spine. So that would mean that his problems are coming from the spine, not in the peripheral nerve, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is no solace to him. This is no help for him, because the innervation point as it exits the spine is probably where the problem is. You think they probably, but it's been happening for a couple years. So the discectomy hasn't solved his problem, it sounds like.
Right. I think that unfortunately he'd have to kind of approach it with different modalities, kind of like you were saying, aimed at kind of relieving that inflammation right as those nerve roots are actually exiting the spine, whether that be corticosteroid shots or the like.
Dawn Fenty Sheck, I don't think we're going to have an answer for you, Dawn. What about if you have Lyme disease, Bartonella, which is the bacteria, or that not bacteria, I guess the parasite that causes Lyme. I don't understand the question, Dawn. Are you having atrophy in muscles? And if you are, and it's because of this, I don't think this would be a solution for her, right? I mean, that's the only thing I can be assumed. She's asking the question, what about if I have Lyme disease?
Right.
Is atrophied muscles a symptom of Lyme disease? My cousin has Lyme disease. I don't think she has atrophying muscle.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that as a common side effect.
So Camilla Cierzo, yesterday, after I dropped my bike on my ass, I was bruised, and the next day the pain started, and I posted on Facebook a brief video, and I said, should I go for the Aleve? Okay, because the day before, I have an ARX machine at home. Are you familiar with that piece of equipment?
Yeah.
And so I found a way to hit my lower traps. I mean, my lower lats. I've never been able to hit my lower lats. And in fact, my back is very wide, but I got to get my hand. But it goes like this. Shoop. Never been able to get that bottom, 10%, 15. And I found a way to do it. And then I dropped the bike on my ass. And the next morning I was in pain. And I was like, do I take an Aleve and blunt the protein synthetic response of this successful approach to hitting my lats?
Right.
Or just tough it out? And so Carmela's asking, did you take the Aleve? No, I did not. I toughed it out. And the truth is, actually what I did do was I took some a pretty large dose of BPC 157 and IGF-1 EC, mechanical growth factor. I did take that. And during the day, I did have some botanic tonics that really made me feel better. I don't know if you folks are familiar with botanic tonics. They're a sponsor. This stuff really works. It's a combination of it's a combination of kratom, very, very small amount of kratom, and kava and pineapple juice. And it creates a mild euphoric effect. So if I don't want to go out and drink, but I want to be socially lubricated, I'll use it. But I took this and the pain went away like within minutes. If you ever want to check it out, go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free and use the code SHR40 for 40% off. It's really amazing stuff. And it's not like taking kratom. A lot of people take kratom and they say, oh, I hate the way it makes you feel. There's such a minuscule amount of kratom in there, but it does have an analgesic effect. That is what I did, actually. Do you think there's any value to anything you used? Well, not the ultrasound for the diagnosis, but the hydrodissection. Do you think there's a value to that for individuals who don't necessarily have a nerve injury, but want to stretch the fascia of the muscle to give the muscle more room to grow?
That's a good question. I would say kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that in a lot of circumstances that could kind of cause problems, when you're thinking about, I think that we're pretty well designed in such a way that the fascia is in 99% of situations going to grow in such a way that it's accommodating. And I would kind of err on the side of caution and look towards less invasive procedures, or like the myofascial release massage, like you were talking about. I think I would just kind of be concerned that anytime you're putting anything into the the fascial plane or between the muscle. You know, if there's not a pathology that you're trying to fix, I think that I would err on the side of caution to not accidentally create a pathology by doing so.
So this application is very, very specific. It has a very narrow group of uses. What about PRP? Is there any benefit to PRP injections for bodybuilders to help muscles grow faster? Let's say your biceps are your weak spot. Is there a value to putting some of your own platelet-rich plasma into your muscles?
You know, there's certainly a lot of need for further investigation on a lot of these questions regarding PRP. It's kind of just more and more becoming more accepted and more popular as more research comes out, but there's definitely still a lot needed. And I think that people are kind of more focusing on degenerative joint disease and other such problems for which, you know, we really kind of critically need modalities that are kind of short of surgery, you know?
I mean, they're using PRP for ED now.
Right, right.
I mean, right. And they're having great success with it. Like guys who have erectile dysfunction, they get a couple PRP shots in their penis and all of a sudden it starts working again. I mean, that's kind of like magic to me.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot of promise, and I'm excited to see in the coming years as kind of more people are kind of realizing this and kind of being able to research it, because just currently there's just not enough information, and so therefore, you know, the insurance companies aren't covering it, you know, and so I think it's really going to take off in the next couple of years here for sure.
Well, I go back to Joseph Lanigan's question. I wonder if there's any value to PRP when the nerve damage is at the spine. I mean, I have compressed L4, L5, S1 from years of deadlifting and squatting, very heavy. And, you know, I have lower back pain. I live with it. I don't complain about it. But I wonder if PRP injections into that local area would stimulate some sort of healing process or corrective process.
Yeah, you know, I think it's certainly not out of the question, and I'd be really interested to see the same. You know, I think that fortunately there's kind of the hurdles now of the difficulty of doing things new on anybody, you know, with any modality. So I definitely see a need for more research, and I think that's a fantastic idea of how to apply it in the future.
The only person I would trust doing this would be your brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's amazing with ultrasound guided injections. I mean, I've seen some of the videos he does, and he's just like an artist at it. And so, you know, I would try it. I would try PRP injections into that vicinity and just see what happens. Maybe nothing will happen, right?
Right.
It's not like it's going to make it any worse than it already is. All it could do is heal some stuff. So, yeah, fascinating. But put your brother's practice too. For those of you listening to the show who are close enough to drive to Cincinnati, Ohio, Inertia Medical is doing stuff that nobody else is doing. And I say that cautiously because, like, they're not doing anything outlandish, but they're using known processes and medical technologies to and more importantly, Dr. Girmann looks for the root cause of the problem, and then he applies those to the root cause, which in theory would reverse your problem. Plug the practice. Where is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fairfield, Ohio, and like you said, you know, he's always just had a passion for kind of being on the leading edge of treatments. And so from any kind of modality that he's using now, like he's recently started doing a couple months back, very minimally invasive carpal tunnel release, where it used to be an open surgery where you'd be left with a scar about this size on your wrist. Now he just creates the littlest incision and goes in with a special piece of equipment with a little blade that flips up and able to cut the flexor retinaculum, which is the top of the carpal tunnel, to release. And rather than people having to deal with, you know, weeks of recovery, people are going home the same day.
So would that be considered arthroscopic surgery?
Not so much. Arthroscopic is usually with like a camera attached, and he's able to do that under ultrasound again.
Okay.
So
sure.
Being able to like kind of take that image in real time, which is a large part of, you know, kind of the benefit to ultrasound, being able to see actually as it's happening, and along with all of his injections that he does into joints and such, you know, some practitioners, especially kind of old school guys, like to do it blind, you know, and there's kind of some prestige that comes with doing good blind injections, but he does all of his under ultrasound to make sure, when you're injecting around a nerve, you really don't want to be playing games. So
I was just going to say, the guy who can do really good blind injections learned by hurting a lot of people first.
Right.
There's absolutely things in his past where he doesn't want to bring it up because, oops, like when you do, I had ultrasound guided injections into my knees many years ago, and they put that high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, I think it's actually called hyaluron in my knees. And I was able to continue squatting for a decade. I mean, I went for 3 injections 1 week apart in each knee. And within 2 weeks, my knees stopped hurting me. They felt better, more viscous, like I could move faster. And I've never gone back. And plus I've been on growth hormone by prescription, just 0.8 IUs a day. That's all I take for the better part of 17 years now. So the meniscus is in good shape in my body. That's for sure. We have one last question to go to. I want to take our last commercial break. When we come back, Lisa Philbrick Janes has a pertinent question about some muscle atrophy. So hopefully we'll be able to give her some good information. We're talking today with Adam Girmann. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on Earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. That's BODYECO. And using the code SHR20. How often do you wake up in the morning and instantly wish you had just another hour of sleep? Maybe you didn't get enough sleep, or you have brain fog. Your energy is low, or you just can't concentrate. You run for coffee or an energy drink, but that barely moves the needle. Imagine having control over how you feel and being able to just flip a switch and turn on your brain within 10 minutes of waking up without coffee or caffeine. I've personally experienced this over the past few months since trying Newtopia. Newtopia is the most advanced brain support and cognitive enhancement system that I've ever tried. It's like a chemistry set for your brain. Newtopia specializes in personalized brain supplements, also known as nootropics. Newtopia has raised the bar on the nootropic category beyond anything that exists today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Newtopia. That's NOOTOPIA and enter the code SHR10 for an additional 10% off. You will not be disappointed in this product.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. The Hercules pre-workout from Lost Empire Herbs is like no pre-workout you have ever had before. Completely natural formula designed specifically to optimize workouts, provide quicker recovery time, provide adequate nutrition, and get you away from all those no-good, overstimulating pre-workout supplements on the market today. The Hercules pre-workout blend is a mix of extracted natural herbs and mineral pitch rich. No fake colors, no added flavors, nothing else. Not only will Hercules pre-workout formula help your workouts, but you'll likely discover lots and lots of side effects, beneficial side effects. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Lost Empire today to learn more. Hey, you've heard me talk about Masszymes from Bioptimizers for years now. It's a safe and natural digestive enzyme supplement that's for men or women that specifically helps you digest the protein in your diet. I never have a meal without at least 3 Masszyme capsules, and that's because I want every bit of amino acids from the protein I eat day in and day out to help this 64-year-old body continue to build new muscle and strength. Well, I can tell you how you can get a free bottle of Masszymes plus 3 free ebooks as a bonus, total gift worth over $81. You'll not only receive a free bottle of the best digestive enzyme for turning all the protein you eat into muscle-building amino acids, but you'll also receive the book From Sick to Superhuman, Plant-Based Superfood Delights, and the Ultimate Carnivore Cookbook, absolutely free with your free bottle of Masszymes. Take advantage of this opportunity fast because it won't last long. Go to shrnetwork.biz/freemassme, that's FREEMASSME, and see why I will never stop taking Masszymes.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. So we have a question that I do think is pertinent. Maybe I didn't read the whole thing. Lisa Philbrick Jane says, I have a damaged sural, S-U-R-A-L, nerve with 30% muscle atrophy in my left calf. I've had hydrodissection and it didn't help. Is there anything I can do to build the muscle in my calf? Well, but hydrodissection wasn't the real cure, right? The prolotherapy really was the cure.
Well, I think that they all kind of worked in tandem, and it was specifically because of the individual case in which it was due to an impingement between the fascial planes. You know, it's kind of difficult to say in this case without being able to see, you know, under ultrasound where that source of actually nerve damage is, you know, whether it's higher up in the leg, kind of at a spinal nerve location, or if it's lower and it's actually being impinged between 2 muscle heads or of the sort. So I think that there's certainly, you know, further, you know, imaging that can be done with, if there's a practitioner that does a lot of ultrasound and kind of has experience with kind of finding the root of these problems. It's tough to say just with, you know, hearing that. It's unfortunately with nerve injuries, a lot of times it's tough to be able to kind of overcome that, because regardless of kind of what exercises you're doing, you know, even in this case with a bodybuilder who is still working out as hard as he was, you know, doing massively high weight squats, you know, it's just naturally that muscle is not going to come back unless the root of the problem's solved, that nerve damage.
So, Lisa, if you're still watching, was this the result of an injury, or did it just happen? You just woke up one day and it started, the muscle started to get smaller and smaller. If you could answer that question, then maybe we can even talk a little bit further. Because if it's peripheral, there's a lot of things you can do with peptides. If you find the right practitioner who can use ultrasound and get the peptides into the area where the nerve damage is, especially a peptide called ARA290. The name is sabinitide, and it's patented, and there's a pharmaceutical company that produces sabinitide in New Hampshire. I forget, somewhere up there in the Northeast. But you can get sabinitide from compounding pharmacists as well. ARA290, and it's been shown to actually regrow both the myelin sheath and the nerve itself. But you have to remove the insult, right? Like so if you have a problem and it's still there, you could take sabinitide till the cows come home and nothing happens. But once you correct what's causing the nerve to die off, sometimes that could be vasculature. A lot of people develop neuropathies because the blood flow to the nerve changes. We have a lot of that in the United States, actually. But if you could answer whether or not this was an injury or it just came on, you know, idiopathic, it just showed up one day. I may have some ideas for you as well that you could probably take to a good doctor and maybe give it a try. It can't hurt you. You know, there's certain things that increase fibroblast growth factors, which are responsible for helping nerves. I just woke up one day with it. So you have to first of all find out where the nerve is being challenged. Is it in the muscle? Is it peripheral, or is it in the spine? You know, the fact that you just woke up with it it could be in the spine. So you first have to find out where the problem is. You have to have a good diagnosis. You have to have a doctor who's interested in learning where your problem is coming from. 99% of doctors, they'll look at you, they'll give you some bullshit medication, you know, and send you on your way. But if you find a doctor that understands how to use some of the medical equipment the right way, and you know, because I had to go for when I was trying to determine whether the feelings in my legs were coming from my spine, they did this. I don't know what they call it, but they actually stuck a needle. It was a flexible needle in my back, right at my L4, L5. And then they went down my leg and they stuck this damn needle in, and they stuck it in. I mean, they didn't just touch it to my skin. Like it was almost like, what do they call that? Acupuncture. They stuck that needle in there, and then you hear it and you see it. It sounds like cat squealing. And they traced it down and says, yeah, absolutely. This is coming from your spine. So yeah, go ahead.
So that would be the EMG study, which we actually were able to perform on this individual as well. And so kind of this in the same way, you know, you start at the most proximal part and going down and it's normal all along the vastus lateralis. And then that last atrophied region, they call it florid denervation. So you just get absolutely no response from it. So that was kind of alluding to us, you know, it's not just a femoral nerve problem. And so that's exactly what you're kind of saying, where you need to be with a practitioner that's able to take all of that into account to be able to actually give you that initial diagnosis. Because without that, you know, you can treat the femoral nerve and you can, you know, you can do as much as you want and throw as many problems at it. But
I was just going to ask you, where do you live? Please recommend a doctor for me. I've been to numerous doctors and nobody can figure it out. It's not that they can't figure it out. Insurance isn't paying them to figure it out. They're not going to spend 3 hours with you. I have had she's had a laminectomy 40 years ago, L4, L5. Could be that. Laminectomy is when they cut the soft tissue. They're like straps that keep the disc from coming out and keep the vertebrae lined up. You know what I mean? So they usually do that to release pressure between the two vertebrae. So you must have had you may have had chronic erosion or problems, or you may have been in an accident once or hit your back, or you sit all the time, which I really believe a lot of the L4, L5 problems come from, because I know people that never worked out and they have the same problem I do. So, but a lot of us just sit, you know, we just sit on our ass all day and you know, but if you could post where Sarasota, Florida. Okay. So give me a couple days to look around. You're my Facebook friend, so I'll message you on Facebook and see if I can find the doctor that will do the right thing. I had a shattered disc. I'm willing to bet it's coming from your spine, but that doesn't mean something can't be done. You know, who knows? Maybe it's the PRP injections. Maybe you got to come up to Ohio and get PRP injections in your lower spine, like I am going to try. But let me see. Will you drive to? Would you drive to Ohio to see a good doctor, Lisa? Hope your brother's not watching. He's gonna be, Carl, stop that.
That's great.
Let me see. I will do that. Okay. So maybe we'll talk to your brother and have him reach out to Lisa and talk to her. And maybe there's it could be a worthwhile trip. Maybe she has to come once a month for a few months or something like that. We'll try to help, Lisa. You know, that's what this show's all about. All right, look, I think your work is fascinating. And I think that your brother is amazing. And I think that you're probably going to go to work at his clinic once you get your doctorate, right? You
know, that's certainly one of the goals.
Good. I'm glad. Well, look, this has been fascinating. Good discussion. I appreciate your time today. And I also appreciate all those who were here live and ask questions and make the show so much more interesting. And so how can we get your brother in touch with Lisa?
Yeah, so I can follow up with him. Lisa, you're welcome to follow. They have a Facebook page and an Instagram. It's called Inertia Medical. And then you can also just look them up online, and you can contact the clinic directly through there as well.
And if you contact the clinic, Lisa, and they have a website, right? It's inertiamedical.com. If you contact the clinic, explain that you were watching Superhuman Radio when Adam was on the show. Adam is Dr. Jeremy's brother, and you would like to be evaluated by Dr. Jeremy, and they'll do the intake. They'll ask you all the questions. They'll find that you had a laminectomy and all that sort of stuff, and make a trip up to Ohio, and see what could be done. Because I've talked about this over the years. I travel to Indiana I travel to Bloomington, Indiana to see my doctor. I have to see him in person once a year, and the rest of it we do on Skype or Zoom. And I do that because I can't find a doctor in this city that will do the things that he will do, Dr. Matt Andre. And today, if your health really matters, you can't go by the menu from your insurance company or your PPO. Well, this is who's in your group, so that's who you go to. And you can't be confined by geography, because you have to go to the doctor that's willing to do what needs to be done to help you. And medical tourism is a big thing today. People travel to other countries for treatments. Not all of them are good. I'm not saying, Costa Rica, but some of them are good. Panama is real big on anti-aging clinics now. Medical tourism is a real thing, and Ohio is not that far away from you. So there you go. All right, Adam, thanks for being here today, brother.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Take care. And we'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. And don't forget to share the show, because you never know. The side conversations we had here could help somebody you know. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.